Now, before we can go to the lab on SVMs and logical volumes, a couple of things before we do that. First of all, obviously, a storage virtual machine can be created, and after you've created it, it's automatically started. The minute that it is started, clients can access the volumes. If you stop it, you will disallow access to the SVM altogether, also for the IP addresses and for the volumes. And obviously, a storage virtual machine can be deleted, means removed. And if you like, you can rename it on the fly. A volume can be created just the same. You have to create a volume, and after you've created it, it will be online. You can offline the volume, which will disallow access by clients, and you can delete it if you like. Also, if you have a NAS environment, your volume will have to be mounted in the namespace for clients to be able to access it. If you unmount the volume, which is a manual action, then your volume will no longer be accessible by NAS clients. So a SAN client would still be able to access the LUN in the volume, but NAS clients will not have a path to the volume anymore. You can resize the volume, or you can rename it, or you can move it from one aggregate to another aggregate as long as it's in the same cluster, and a volume can be rehosted between SVMs. We're going to have a look at all these different things quickly, and then we go to the lab. So again, the storage virtual machine, as we discussed in the overview, is a container, sort of container, for the namespace, which is all the volumes belonging to that particular SVM, your logical interfaces, which can either be IP addresses or worldwide port names, depending on what protocol you use, and of course you have the protocols, which are all supported in the different SVMs. You could, if you liked, have all these protocols be running in one and the same storage virtual machine. Then you can resize your volumes either automatically or manually. You can shrink them either automatically or manually, and this is all non-disruptive. Another thing you can do is you can move a volume from one aggregate to another aggregate in the same cluster. And thirdly, you can move the volume from one SVM to another SVM. Important remark, this is disruptive. Whether you have SAN or NAS, it is disruptive when you rehost a volume to another SVM. This, by the way, does not mean that the data gets moved. This is just changing the administration of the volume from one SVM to another SVM. Now let's have a look at the command line. Before we start, I set up some instructions to avoid distractions because of my sloppy typing. I'm just going to copy in the commands and then we can discuss them. So let's first have a look at the storage virtual machines we have. So we've got a fresh cluster, installed it just about 2 hours ago, and we see we've got an admin SVM, we have 2 node SVMs. That's all we've got. And there's no specifications whatsoever for these SVMs when we look at it this way. Then we go to the advanced mode and we do vserver show again. Now it tells us that we have a cluster SVM which is of the type system. So we've got type system, type admin, and type node. The system SVM is for cluster interconnects. Then we are going to create our first storage virtual machine, which is called DNFS, meaning data NFS. It's just a name, right? We create the root volume, which is RV, and security style is Unix. Forget about this for the moment. This has to do with ACLs and inodes and what type of security you use when you look at the files. That's for later. And the aggregate is going to be called node1 agar1. So we've got a root volume in node1 agar1, and we have a storage virtual machine, and that storage virtual machine supports NFS, CIFS, 5-chain protocol, iSCSI, and NDMP. So by default, it supports all of these protocols. Now you can stop and you can start an SVM as we discussed. So let's just do that. We stop DNFS and we query the status of DNFS, and it will tell us that it is stopped. As you can see, it stopped and we started it again. So it will be started. We can rename the SVM as well. Let's just do that because we don't like all this DNFS lowercase. We want to have data and then NFS as the protocol with uppercase. And you see the name of the SVM has changed, and we can offline the vServer volume. So the root volume of the NFS server is going to be offline because we want to remove the SVM. We just created it and we want to remove it again. So it tells us that it will be inaccessible, all data. Well, we have no data, it doesn't matter. So now we delete the volume. So we remove the root volume of the SVM, and then we can delete the storage virtual machine. So we're done. vServer show, and we're back to where we began. We've got the cluster SVM, the admin SVM, and two node SVMs.